Sun City and those groups, they typically, they're against a lot of these increases because they come out and they do the calculations. You know, not every increase is a bad increase, but the thing is the rate shock stuff. And these utilities would be better off, actually, if they had slight tick-ups that we're aware of, so people could move with that. But they always seem to come, and well, I don't want to characterize all these rate cases, but we regulate 300 water companies in this state, along with the utilities we regulate. We don't regulate municipalities. I think you're aware of that. And SRP is considered a municipality. But when it comes to these programs, like what will it do to regulate CO2? What will it do to cut back on CO2? Well, what it'll do is they're going to charge these utilities a bunch of money if it's coal-produced power or natural gas produced, and that's going to be passed along. And that's why we have to sue them. That's why we have to sue the EPA. Because the other reason I think it's worthwhile to sue the EPA, do you remember what the Corp was like 3 years ago, the Supreme Court? I think it was 3 years ago, 4 years ago. Senator O'Connor was still there, and so they passed, they said they designated CO2 as a greenhouse gas that should be regulated. And we've had the turnover of two justices that George Bush had, and I think David Kennedy, who's kind of in the middle, has watched who Barack Obama is appointing, and you've seen him move actually right. He's kind of the center in the middle, and actually Senator O'Connor was the one in the middle, and Kennedy was on the right, and then he became the one in the middle. Well, now he is the one in the middle, and I think he's with Alito and Roberts so much. I think he really likes Alito and Roberts. I think he'd love to vote on this again ever since, especially the ClimateGate emails and all that stuff came out. I think he'd really like to take a shot at that again. And I fully intend to give him an opportunity to do that because CO2 should not be a regulated greenhouse gas.
The Corporation Commission, its main function is actually to review these major companies that have these utilities that want to pass on the cost to the individuals, and you've got to discern whether it's warranted or not. Is that your position?
Right. What the Constitution says is we have exclusive rate making on these utilities, so we set rates. Further, though, we have permissive authority under the Constitution that we actually share with the legislature. More so than just share. The legislature can trump us. If it's some policy we get into, for instance, renewable energy policy, the Commission took the position that was exclusive rate making. Well, the Goldwater Institute sued. I took the position, along with the Speaker of the House, that we have permissive authority under that, and the legislature could actually trump that. So, but the permissive authority is very wide. Exclusive rate making is what we're primarily supposed to do. We're supposed to forensic audit these companies on their expenses, all that stuff, and set rates that are just and reasonable. But it's not just and reasonable to the company, it's just and reasonable to all of us. And so even though they may have expended something like on a new plant, if the rates aren't just and reasonable to take that in, then they may not get all of that in that rate case. They may wait a while, which we're in a recession, and that's what I'm trying to get across to a lot of them is they built for the future because we were in a growth spurt. They've got a lot of plant that's a little bit stranded right now. They're not using so much of it, and they're just they need to hold the line on that until a time as we come out of this, because it's going to take a while to come out of this. Right here.
What's going to happen? How's it going to affect the Corporation Commission and corporations, utilities in this state if this cap and trade bill that John McCain and Senator Lieberman have proposed, is that going to affect the way they do business here, affect the way the corporation looks at it?
Let me put this. First of all, the new one is Kerry Lieberman. McCain's not on that. That doesn't mean that Senator McCain believes CO2 is not a poisonous greenhouse gas. I'll leave that for him to describe, because we do know there was a time he was on that cap and trade with Lieberman. And but I'll leave that to him to say where he's at now. I'm hopeful with the emails that came to ClimateGate that he's really looked at that. He and I have had that conversation a year and a half ago, because that's the most troubling thing for me is, this is trillions of dollars of transfer of wealth out of our pockets to who knows where. That's why this thing is so important, because it's a scam. And cap and trade's a scam. Well, I believe it's all a scam. Now, some people will say, well, we can tax it at the source and give it all back to us. Tax CO2? Come on. Yes, back here.
Everybody here works very hard all day, and they may not have time to watch Glenn Beck or some of those programs. But cap and trade is a scam, according to Mr. Beck, because the Chicago Climate Exchange, which will handle all of the trades, is run by Barack Obama and Valerie Jarrett. Mr. Wonderful Al Gore bought a huge chunk of it with a phony company he started in England. Goldman Sachs owns a piece of it. So every single trade back and forth will be forced to go through there, and it'll be trillions of dollars to this select group, and a lot of it goes back to George Soros, who actually, you know, had a great effect on our election.
3 years ago, the group she just talked about, the Chicago Climate Exchange, 3 years ago, you know how people were involved in that? I will tell you in a second. I was in Santa Fe and we were talking about climate change legislation, what's going on, and that's when I told everybody, if you're honest, you'd never do cap and trade. You would simply tax it at the source. If you were honest, you'd tax it right at the source, the power plant, and then you would take every penny and return it to ratepayers. So you would have higher rates, but everybody would have the money to pay for it, so there'd be no advantage for the utility to keep doing that, if they were honest. Obviously, I think that's all bogus, but the Chicago guys were there. And so finally, we were having a little debate out in the hallway afterwards. And I said, you have an interesting name. It sounds like a very large organization, but I haven't really heard of you before. How many of you are involved in this? And he said, well, just me and another guy. That's where it was 3 years ago. Just him and another.
It's got a lot of the top.
It's got a lot of wheels now.
Yeah.
What they did was they created a brokerage house for this stuff, and they stuffed themselves in it. But my point is that if this is the case, why isn't the federal government and the rest of those individuals, I mean, they're dirty as sin, but I mean, stuff like this is what they're supposed to protect against. The concept of somebody bleeding us instead of making these trades on an equal or fair basis to benefit the citizens. It doesn't.
Just look at who's paying for their campaigns. I think it's almost always going to come back to the money. And well, this is your pure money transfer. This is just a transfer, and people are going to benefit. And it's going to be any of us. So
they're like I said, they bought into it, and so now they're going to get their percentages on this. So.
Okay, think about it. How do you think Al Gore got so rich? What did he actually do, physically or mentally, to get that? Not what he says he did. What did he actually do? He actually set the stage for all this transfer of wealth.
Well, he created a crisis. That's what he did.
Out of thin air.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here with you. I am, Sherry would talk. I heard Sherry talk to a group, a Tea Party group, not long ago, and talk about something that this needs to be said more often. Thank you so much for what you're doing, because 4 years ago there were not groups like this. How many of you are actually precinct committeemen 4 years ago in the Republican Party? Not very many. I went my first Tea Party. Well, actually, I spoke in the very first Tucson one on April 15th of last year. I was the first speaker out. But I spoke to a group in Coolidge, and I could tell by the questions I was getting, this is pretty sophomoric, some of the questions. And they're not here tonight, but then they were really rookie questions. So I said, how many of you are here, and this is last fall, were not engaged in January? So when I say last fall, that was Barack's first year. All but 3 people. And there were 30-some in the room. And what's happened is people all over remember how it was with Reagan, how wonderful that was. And then we got transitioned with Bush. And then Clinton scared us, but then in 1994, we got a Republican Congress. And we thought, okay, we got some control. And then we got George Bush, who overspent like crazy, who had Republicans, and it just started getting worse. And then we got Barack Obama.